Hey guys, Dave from Nerdarchy, for nerds, by nerds, here with a bunch of my esteemed colleagues. And today we're going to be talking about players' tips.
But before we do that, maybe we should introduce ourselves.
Nah, they know who I am, that's enough.
I'm Ryan.
I'm Ted.
I'm Nate.
So, okay, we were just having this discussion while Ted was out of the room, and we're kind of arguing back and forth about the whole concept of an adventurer and adventuring. To me, my claim is they're actually it's a very artificial term, and it's not. I don't really feel like it's a real world thing. It's kind of like made up around the mechanics of the game, sort of deal. And how we started arguing about this was, or discussing, or throwing things at each other,
Yelling. It was just lots of
Passion. There was passion.
I was talking about how after every one of my sessions, I just want to level up my players, and as long as it's at a stopping spot, I'm going to probably just say time passes, in between each adventures, because I've always had this thing where I tended to run one adventure into the other, and it's like, it was kind of cool for what we did, but when you look at the passage of time, it's like you're 7th level and 2 weeks have gone by.
Yeah.
And that may have been a bunch of sessions, but it was like too much stuff that happened in between.
It seems unrealistic.
Yeah.
Like, oh man, I learned so much.
Another good
2 weeks.
example of it is, and I'm going to borrow for future campaigns, is Dresden Files, where nothing goes on for a while, and then you read a book that happens over the course of 1 or 2 days, and he doesn't sleep at all, almost like a season of 24.
Right.
So, I guess the argument was, you were saying, what about adventurers?
Well, basically, I was looking at them as sort of, it's almost like a freelancer that has a really big project, and then they can take off the next 1 to 3 months or something like that. So they get this really big gig, they work their ass off, and then they go on a quasi vacation.
Okay,
for a month.
let's stop there. What's an adventurer?
Okay, so
what is your opinion here?
I would say an adventurer overall is a guy that either is some kind of epic hero or a person that was in the right place at the wrong time and something occurs and they either have to run or, the way most fantasy novels start. At first level adventure. So that's that's kind of gives me that feeling. And then there's, I would say, the NPC version of an adventurer, like a Tomb Raider or some kind of, basically those are the guys who are like, wait, you're not doing this for justice? I don't like you. I always kind of enjoy the good, the good and the upright citizen kind of adventurer rather than the sly or the grave robbing kind of adventurer.
You go adventurer.
Well, my history of stuff at the table has always been the progressive story, and rarely, unless it's physically sought out by the players, because it's this wizard wants to create a magic item, bless you, or this guy wants to forge this weapon. It always has been the story just rolls, and you might take a week here or a day there while you're waiting for something to happen. But it's never as you said, the Dresden Files, where it's a year and a half passes or 8 months passes with nothing going on. That's practically unheard of at the gaming table where I've sat.
So going back to just briefly to the freelancer example, the term freelancer actually came from freebooting knights. They were mercenary knights that would go, and they were lances for hire. So freelancing actually came out of soldiers for hire.
They're mercenaries.
So they're
Exactly.
mercenary knights.
So it's pretty apropos in a way for when
So in that case, that's a job, but I don't a mercenary is not an adventurer. Adventurer is, in this game,
a mercenary could be an adventurer.
It could
it's just
be,
not. It's not always.
But
the case.
the evolution to me is very weird and artificial. In Forgotten Realms, I don't know if they did it in Greyhawk or not, but definitely in Forgotten Realms, they started with adventuring companies. Who, it's their job is to go out and plumb the depths of the dungeons, right? Which again, a dungeon, the term dungeon, is completely different by definition than what it actually is used for in this game.
Right.
A dungeon is where you hold prisoners.
Right.
It's not a place full of monsters, traps, tricks, and treasure. So all of that is very weird, and and because I've gamed at the same table as these guys and Ted, my experience has been the same. But after 20 years or so of running that game, I want to do a paradigm shift personally and go, you know what? That's not what it's about. They're not really doing it. Your character in Ted's campaign is a perfect example. He considers himself a tailor.
Right.
even though he steals and he's shady. But ultimately, at the end of the day,
Well, no, the tailor is his cover, though. I mean, like, he doesn't
so
really...
But you
much
do
so-
it well. You still do
Yeah.
tailoring.
but you're still a tailor. Like, it couldn't be, it wouldn't be an effective cover if you didn't know how to actually do the
it
thing.
well. Right, yeah.
So you come from tailors. He actually wants to have a tailor shop to
But
further
the-
perpetuate.
But thieving is easy. It's lazy. It's
Yeah.
the big heist, so that you don't really have to work for that many months. Yeah, it's kind of.
But still, like if he still does that, he still needs the shop to maintain his cover.
right.
So he still has like a base of operation, and so there's going to be weeks where nothing's going on. He's hanging out at the shop. He's talking to people. You know, maybe he uses at the case perspective
Targets.
targets. You know, so
And in the same campaign, you actually have a job at the smithy.
Although adventurers make for terrible employees.
Yeah, they
Like,
do.
"Oh, I gotta leave. They're always leaving early.
I gotta save the town.
Appropriate bosses.
Yeah, right.
Be like, yeah, I'm going away for the weekend. I got some stuff to do.
Woohoo, kick your feet up.
yeah, but so this stuff is going on. And I want to see that introduced more into our games. I'm going to do it personally. I'm going to do stuff where like. You haven't. You guys have been off living your lives for the past 3 months.
You guys work at Quiznos, all right? So we're doing
Yeah.
like a reality television show with adventurers working in a sandwich shop.
Now, my one thing with that is, it's like okay, 6 months pass. Well, let's say you're on the same town. Well, if you guys all have different attitudes, like let's say take Ted's game for example. We've got the tailor who's really a thief. We've got the cleric who's not really a cleric, and he's really a merchant. And
Well,
he's
we're
got-
going to be doing deals together.
Yeah, he's got his
long
own thing.
leave for
yeah.
fine garments.
So right now we're together on deals, and we have some of the other characters. We've got the druid and the ranger, right?
Right.
And we've got.
I know where you're going with this.
Well,
Don't bother me with it. He's the DM. It's his problem.
well, let's say similar characters are in your game, and you say, and then you say, we're going to take. You go. You had 6 months. You gained a level. You're from your recent adventuring. You've got 6 months. What do you do? You're like, well, I move on to the next town and the next deal. If I was in Dave's campaign, I'd be looking for more merchant contracts, unless I saw something really extremely lucrative happening in the city.
Yeah,
then-
but see, you're right. In a certain sense, you're constantly having to figure out how to put them back together.
Well, you got to have that timing work out. All right, well, such and such a time has gone by. Your
Well-
character makes his migration back to Griffin-Graft.
Yeah,
this
and-
could also
and-
be on
and
the
that's-
swing.
that's exactly what I was
go
gonna
off
say.
on a.
Well, or what if one of your previous deals now there's a problem with it, and you have to go back to fix it.
And you need muscle.
So as long as you're willing to do it's a lot of work. You can't just say, well, oh, hey, guess what? It's 6 months have passed. You've leveled up your character and we're back to the table. We're going to play. 6 months passed. You couldn't do it that way because it would be very.
Yeah,
much
but
like-
well, there's an opportunity, especially through mediums like Facebook, for you to go, okay, to have a dialogue with your characters, maybe even a Facebook group where you do like a Gazette type deal where you go, oh, well, this is kind of the stuff that's been going on in the campaign world while you guys have been living your lives, and you give the players the option, well, what do you guys been doing? And yeah, when it's time to adventure again, you do need to pull them back together.
A campaign
But-
newsletter.
Yeah.
Like the local Gazette. Your reaction to the things that are going on in the local area.
But the subsequent getting the party together sessions are not going to be as hard as the initial.
Right.
When no one knows each other. You guys have gone through some, all right, let's look at my campaign that just happened. We just did it last night.
Right.
Fresh in everyone's mind.
I forget.
Oh, curses.
I wasn't there.
Yeah. All right,
Hence
me
why I
and
used
Ted
Ted's
will talk
campaign.
about this. No. So basically what happens, quick recap is, Ted is part of an expedition exploring some phenomenon. Ryan's character is part of an expedition exploring some phenomenon in 2 different worlds. And then our Gavalo characters are there just looking to cause trouble, mayhem, and find the mystic chalice,
The chalice
of the fake love.
Yeah, that's right.
Right? So they all end up converging in the same spot because the Dragonborn fall from their world into his world. Then, they're attacked by monsters. Then there's a goblin abduction. No, goblins weren't abducted. Goblins abducted. Not goblins, but Dragonborn. So they wanted to get their Dragonborn back, right? And so they have to go through this whole ordeal, and it takes the course of several days.
Right.
So right there, a bond has been formed because Galalos have broken into your camp and stolen your stuff.
Right.
Maybe, or maybe it was something else, completely entirely different. But either way, like they went through this traumatic experience, and they've started building bonds.
Well,
So
you have on the one side. Let's take for instance Ryan's character and my character. You know, we were both essentially assistants studying this thing, and we're both apparently scholars. So you have that initial, okay, well, we both want to explore. We both want,
there's a lot of commonality there you guys share.
and then on top of that, you know, I you know, he might not know the long and the short of it, but that's going to come in story. I saved him from dying. I actually stood over his dying body to protect him from the goblins.
Well, they were just trying to abduct me. They didn't want to kill me or anything.
Well, yeah. They tried to kill your friend. They did take your leader.
They did take my lead.
They did take your leader.
Yeah.
But my point is, so now if I go, hey, 3 months have passed and you guys have all been hanging out in Griffin because you guys are stranded, and you know right now the people from the expeditions are the ones like, well, we can try and help you with the research in order to try and see if there's a way to go back.
Right.
You know, because the phenomenon that you guys have been studying is completely different from the phenomenon that actually pulled you guys through. It visually looked different. It had a different effect. So you don't know that, you don't really know how to recreate that per se. So you guys are kind of stuck together to a certain extent in the same region. Right. Sure, you guys could go off somewhere else and explore, but as far as you know, the way back is probably connected to this location somehow. You know, we have, the Gobelos, who are basically looking for a place to fit in the world. And what they've struggled with is the fact that before joining a circus of monstrous humanoids, they didn't have access to civilization because they would be run off right away.
Right.
But the circus allowed them to kind of get into it, but all the circus members were murdered by blood cultists.
Right.
So they're kind of like, on the outs with everything. They find you guys, latch on, prove helpful and comical. Maybe there's way too much goblin piss involved. But, it kind of works out, and they're going to see a way to get back into civilization because they actually enjoy it.
Right.
And so that allows me to have all you guys kind of in the same vicinity. So if I do let time elapse, you guys can all decide what you've been doing for the past 3 months.
Right.
And hey, if someone does, I left and I went to another town, then I'm fine. I'm fine with that. They're in another town. Their night might be very boring because that's what their character would do. Right. But it comes back to the sense of my one of our viewers and someone who I've been building a friendship with and I played a couple games with, a really good guy, David Sems, has brought up is you need buy-in from your players. If you're going to be a douchey player and go, well, that's not what my character would do, and I'm not talking about being railroaded, but just being contrary for contrary's sake, well, then I say fine. Let that player sit in the corner all night and never touch a die, and never interact because, if you set parameters, the player should find a way to work within them, within reason. And if your parameters are kind of like be connected to the region somehow, I don't think that's too much to ask.
Right.
When that's where the game is starting.
Yeah, so that deals with players' expectation. So if you set a certain expectation, you can say, hey, be regional for this area or be able to get back like within 6 months.
Right.
So with my merchant guy, real easy fix is I go on a merchant route that is uneventful, thankfully, and then I'm coming back, and then so that's when everything occurs.
If I'm running my campaign centered on Griffin Gaff and it's that standard in out type situation, Griffin Gaff is where your home base is. Mm-hmm. You're going to need to report in on some kind of regular basis as to what you're doing, because while you can speak for your house and you can set up trades, you are not the end all be all.
Oh, yeah.
And if somebody shows up in Griffin Gaff 3 months after you left saying, oh yeah, I spoke to this guy and I've got this thing going on, how are they to know? Mm-hmm. So you need to be able to report that information.
I need some place where the mail goes that I can answer it, yeah.
So you are going to come back and you're going to have reasons for it. And if, as Dave says, you have a, Facebook connection, phone calls, emails, you do a little bit of in-between
just
session
simple messaging back and forth
to
about
say,
what happens.
All right, what are you doing? This is the time parameters. And you say, okay, well, all right, well, so it's 6 months and 3 days because it's going to take you a little bit extra longer. all right, fine. You get it all weaved back together, and hey, you have that silly thing of, all right, you've all landed back into here. All your business is complete at the moment, and the session starts.
Yeah, the buy-in from the players is really important. And
So-
a DM that's going to work with you on it is also, I think, really important as well.
So that, to me, that's the version of where characters have their lives that they go on with, where adventuring sometimes happens. Now, there's the other one where their adventuring is their life, which to me is a kind of like, sure, you can have characters that are like that, but whole parties like that all the time seems very weird to me. Like they are really murder hobos. They just go from town to town, killing people, taking their stuff, looking for the next
So
store.
that's the adventurer brigand,
Right.
or the adventure highwayman.
Yeah, but
He's
that's
always
but
on an adventure.
But the thing is, that's like the common thing, though. That's what most groups are.
But we've spent so long doing that. Not to say that that it's wrong or that it's right. Honestly, our group has had so many years of that. And I mean, my campaign, I've run 3 sessions, and in each session, there has been some downtime. It might not be 6 months, it's not a year, but there was like a couple of weeks in between,
Right.
the first session and the second session. And the second and the third, it really was, there was still leading up off of the same situation. So there wasn't any downtime between those. But there also wasn't really a level game. Everybody was continuing on. So
Well, see, that's kind of like my main thing. Like, it comes back to there's been too many campaigns where like you gain all these levels, but no time really passes.
and
And I mean, I guess that goes back to the original that you're supposed to have downtime and do the training stuff, and which I don't like that either because it's really restrictive and stringent. So what I really want to start doing is somewhere in between. And I want to focus on the difference of being, there are these people that have adventures sometimes, but they have pretty much normal lives.
Well, I mean, because otherwise you can go from a peasant to an epic hero in the course of a year. Level 1 through 20.
Absolutely.
Like if you're constantly.
Yeah,
yeah.
in-game time,
Yeah, it's kind of.
That's what I mean.
And that's supposed to be a career. That's supposed to be a 15+ year trek to get from the starting hero to this creature of legend.
Well, maybe, but I guess there's also but there's definitely
Creature of legend. My character becomes the Tarrasque.
I have regional actions and lair actions.
Lairs, yeah.
Rawr.
I got a lair.
I'm a gnome. But no, for those archetypes, there's definitely in various novels and books, there's absences of both. There is that someone goes from being a peon to awesome overnight, and then there is the progression. Like the Dresden File books is a great example of the progression. Like he starts off pretty badass, but like the ante keeps upping over the course of years. He gets better and better. That's more normal. I can't think of off the top of my head of a story where the main character kind of like over a short period of time goes from being the epic level hero from being the peasant. But I know they're out there. I know. I'm sure I've read plenty of those books.
Aragon happens pretty fast, I think.
Okay.
Time-wise, because, basically everything happens because he gets the dragon egg. So it's kind of like, that's the big deal. So that, like, totally transforms his life in a short period of time.
Well, I guess even more recent too, Game of Thrones, Daenerys is like that a lot too.
Yeah.
Where she gets elevated really quickly in the books and the stories. I mean, time passes, but not that much time.
But it's a big deal going from, a landless person to where she goes to, yeah.
To Khaleesi, yeah. So there's definitely, both of those tropes are supported in books. And in your game, you can do either. And then you can absolutely do the Forgotten Realms. We are an adventuring company. You sign your name. This is the things you get. Here's what happens in case
1/13
you
of treasure, your funeral expenses.
Yeah.
Well, basically that's from the Hobbit.
Yeah,
too.
from Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
So that was kind of in there too. But with Lord of the Rings though, that was a specific endeavor that they were contracting towards.
It was a big one, but it was just a specific thing.
Where the adventuring company from Forgotten Realms is no, we go from thing to thing.
Yeah.
where they're almost like a mercenary company or a salvage company. It kind of reminds me of like a salvage company. Yeah,
We've located a new rundown dungeon. Let's see what's inside.
yeah. Instead of diving wrecks, they're diving dungeons.
Right. But it's also too like a criminal organization. You plan heists, you go on the heist, you have like a month off or whatever, and then you have the next planning phase for the next job, and you can get that.
Or an archaeologist
Right,
expedition
yeah,
where you don't record anything, you just take the stuff.
Right. Yeah.
And kill monsters if they happen to be there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's like there's these different precedents for these different styles of play, and I don't think there's a right or a wrong one. It's just whatever you prefer. But I'm kind of in the mood to try time passes, stretch it out a little bit. People can tell me what's going on with their characters when they're not off on epic quests.
Yeah. Although if you don't have any coin, that time off is going to be kind of miserable because like right now all of our characters are pretty broke.
What are you talking about? You guys got like tons of silver and copper.
Yeah.
Man, we got like 11 gold each last night.
Yeah.
You can buy some chickens with
Dude,
that.
do you know how wealthy you can live for months with that? That's almost a year of living really well.
Not really. No, it's not.
Well, not paid at an end.
when you look at the upkeep thing, so it's not.
Well, what is it? Let's look. The book is there.
Yeah.
It's 10 gold, isn't it?
Noble's like 10 gold.
Which
For a
chapter is
short
it
amount
even?
of time. I think it is 10 gold a month.
Yeah. Well, you guys.
Living like a peasant, though. You could live like a peasant for a long time.
Nah, you can live well. You just can't live wealthy.
Living expenses.
Well, I mean, a well-fed peasant.
So, like, okay, so you got a month where you live like a rock
You know
star.
what? Prices per day. So, 10 gold per day as an aristocrat, or 4 gold per day as a wealthy person. So then you just do the multiplier of the cost of a month.
So 300.
So I could live like a king for a day and then
Nice.
be destitute the rest of the time.
And what's modest?
the modest is a gold piece a day.
Now,
Nice.
it also doesn't. It doesn't. You're not just sitting on your butt for 6 months. I mean,
There are some exceptions
so-
about being a tradesman,
and there is some rule about
Foraging.
going off and foraging, or doing some kind of simple labor.
Well, you know what? I'm fine with that, because if you're just going to sit on your ass and not do anything in that time, then yeah, you're going to have to live like a peasant. Get a job and a haircut.
Yeah. Beggar king. Then you worship the beggar king, and you go and worship, then you go and beg on the street corner.
Yeah. But, even adventurers in their downtime are going to have a day job. So that's going to put them at whatever that category is. And then if you talk about having, even if it is only 15 gold pieces to your name on top of that, it's still a lot. I mean, generally, whatever your bracket is at, is going to cover your living expenses.
My character works at Famous Sandalwear. We refine the sandals to equip your feet.
all your
I'm
adventuring
just
and walking
envisioning
needs.
Episodes of Married with Children.
Yeah.
Take out Al Bundy and put in a Dragonborn.
Yeah, pretty much.
Gee, Al. Oh, man.
So Married with Children aside.
Married with dragon eggs.
Married with Dragon Eggs.
So a big deal for making everything run smoothly is player buy-in. DM that's going to cooperate with different plans.
Having
on your
resources to
downtime.
live throughout your downtime.
The resources to make sure that you don't starve on the street and have a miserable time. You're going to have a bad time if you have 10 gold for 6 months.
Yeah.
But hey, the other side of that is if what is it? Was a gold piece for a modest? You could really eat away your player's money.
Coin, yeah.
This is
So,
true,
it's been
yeah.
6 months. Subtract 180.
Well, especially if they say, "Oh, I'm going to do my little side project." Well, if you're not going to work during the day at some kind of menial job just to make sure that you get fed and you have a place to stay, well, when you work on your special project, you're going to have to take it out of your resource funds that you got left
Absolutely.
over. So,
If they want to live like an aristocrat, that's 1,800 gold. You're just like, just take that away. It's not there anymore.
it's not there. Poof, it's gone.
And it's gone.
Yeah, my noble's been roughing it in the in Ted's campaign. He's only got 15 gold left, and he's sad about that. He likes that. He has at least have a good cushion of 200 gold in his pocket.
For for the characters, and this is a great thing for 5th edition with player background. The backgrounds, I would look and see what the benefit is for like the merchant or the artisan guild, and I would actually, in some ways, in the downtime for your character, be like, okay, well, you can actually earn a living doing that, because that's
a good point. Yeah.
Because it falls into your backstory, even though that's not really, your feature per se. But but it does set down a guideline for what you can be doing.
Yeah, because I could develop that type of relationship in my downtime, gaining skills as a merchant.
Well,
and then having that as a,
you would be. That's what your background is. You set up deals for your house and and earn an income. And
of course, the other thing of having that downtime is you then have the capacity to begin setting up let me learn a language, let me get, armor smithed for me, and all of those things they have, in the book.
Because it takes a long ass time to make some armors.
The timelines for that stuff.
Well, yeah, like in your campaign, my character always said, "Yo, look, start making the full plate now because I know it takes a while."
I'd like to buy it a piece at a time. Today, I'd like to buy the right gauntlet.
Tomorrow, I'm coming back for the cod piece.
I knew the cod piece was going to make it into reference somehow.
The cod piece is the most important piece of the armor, man.
Right, exactly.
You got to protect the family jewels.
Yeah, you got to protect the lineage there.
Yeah, it's very important in a dwarvish clan. Yeah, your character's already set up with the Taller thing, so yeah, sure, he's lazy and he doesn't want to do that.
And he's technically a criminal. Yeah. That's his background, but he's got the Taylor side to it as well.
It's a sideline gig.
Yeah, well, and that expands his network.
So with games that are going to have that kind of back, of maybe a really active period of maybe a week and then 6 months off, makes a big important part of the backgrounds where you're actually going to make a good decent living, as a merchant or as an artisan or a guild member.
It's like you always need a stable day job. No matter what you're going to do, you need to have a good fallback plan because this adventuring thing, it might not be here tomorrow.
Well, and okay, so let me look at my campaign because it just happened last night, and we haven't discussed this with any of the players yet. So we'll discuss it right now a little bit. So I have 7 players in this campaign. I have 2 goblins with the entertainer background. How are they gonna make money and survive? They're gonna entertain people.
Yeah,
they're gonna juggle. They're gonna fire breathe. They're gonna tumble. They're gonna be ridiculous, and they're probably gonna be chased out of a lot of places
because they're gonna be on drugs.
Yeah, and they're on.
They
drugs
blatantly do drugs. So
kids, don't do drugs. It's bad for you. Stay in school.
Unless you want to be a retarded goblin.
Yeah, unless you want to be a retarded goblin. Again, refer back to our video where we talk about the druid and not listening to Ryan.
You have Todd, who's a bard.
Todd's a bard, but he's not that kind of bard. He's actually more of a guardsman. And he just came back from a semi-successful guard expedition where, not everyone died, but he survived. So by process of elimination, he might be able to get more gigs privately or working for the town.
He could do security, mall cop.
Yeah,
Blart, mall cop.
He's the Market Square cop.
Now, we have 2 Dragonborns that are there with a scholar type.
Right.
So that's going to go one of 2 ways. I definitely see the one actually, having to be supported by the other Dragonborn, because really all he knows to do is guard that Dragonborn. Right. He's the bodyguard. That's his job. He technically already has a job, but they're cut off from basically
fund sources.
The funds from the employer. So he might have to actually rely on the skills of the other Dragonborn to actually provide sustenance and whatnot, because he signed on for a particular job and he's doing it. We have your character, who is the unwilling cleric.
He's not as unwilling. He has no problem embracing it.
Yeah, he didn't sign on for the game.
Yeah, he didn't sign on for it. And
he got headhunted.
So he has the thirst for knowledge. So right now he's gonna probably be talking to Falcor and whatever your dude's master is to try and learn as much as he can.
So that kind of character, he's probably gonna have to find some kind of gig in academia while he's in between. Or working as a scribe or something.
He probably is not gonna be wanting to do a scribe work.
Oh, sure, he's not gonna want to, but he needs to eat.
But he can also bounce back and forth between, academia and, whatever, medicine, care, is in the town.
Healthcare is kind of a big thing.
Because he is an actual bona fide priest, or healer, whatever you want to call it. Not every clergyman in a town is an actual cleric, so they don't all have access to magic. Some of them are just, religious.
Well, also, too, though, there's a funding source behind the study of that portal, the gate, right? So really, you
Yeah.
could just sign on to do like more research, like see. If
Well,
you
that's
get
what I mean.
hired.
That's
Like,
the
basi-
academia.
Like that's my character. He's basically going to find out. All right, who's the team that's
You need to
researching
get yourself
it?
a
Well,
fellowship.
well, my way back is through that gate. So I have a vested interest in learning about it anyway, and that's what I
Right.
was already doing. So may as well see if I can figure out the return trip or not. Yeah.
So who else? Oh, we have
There's Pete.
Pete. There's Pete, our Tom character, and he already has a gig.
He's got something going on, that's shady.
You know, he's got the criminal background, and he's a smuggler.
Yep. I got some questions about a certain crystal that he was using.
Now that apparently hasn't been discussed openly in game yet.
Not
so.
yet. No, it's
No.
something I've made a note to visit though when there's been downtime, when we're not looking for my mentor that's been dragged roughly through the wilderness.
And goblins aren't shooting arrows at you
Yeah, exactly.
from either side of the fence.
Right. Yeah.
So, you know, like, there's definitely, like, I definitely see the possibility for those characters to have stuff to do during the downtime. You know, and actually, you know, let's see, 1, 2, 3 of you guys are kind of tied to this phenomenon.
Right.
So you're not going anywhere.
Right.
Which makes it really easy, as far as what you're bringing up. Pete has roots in the town, so he's probably not going anywhere either.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and the goblins, if a town actually lets them in, they're probably not leaving until they get run out. And then the wild card would actually be Torg, Todd's character. Because he's got a totally different background, and he might move on. We don't know, but for the most part, everyone's going to kind of stay in the same region. So I don't foresee it being hard to have my people with regular kind of lives in a fantasy world sometimes adventure.
People adventure, not adventurers who people.
Right.
Is that where we're going?
Right. That's Forgotten Realms.
I'm an adventurer. I play a townsperson every once in a while.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's the Adventuring Company. So so that just strikes me as being kind of weird and really artificial. It's kind of like a profession that springs up around the game.
Well, yeah,
But
there's some dungeons there might be dragons in it. Let's go find out.
Well, yeah,
Bring
even
your
like
thief.
even like
your door basher.
a bounty hunter. Like, I don't know. I guess you would have to use like Dog the Bounty Hunter as a thing. Like, he's not tracking down somebody every single day of the week. I'm sure some of that's like reconnaissance research. And
oh yeah, because they actually do that on the show.
Oh, really? I've never actually
that part
watched
of it.
it.
Yeah.
There's research, there's informants, there's there's a whole network for that
'Cause
person.
There are real life allegories to the adventurer.
Yeah,
Okay,
right.
As a profession, I would put as I mentioned before, people that do salvage work, mercenaries, the archaeologist types.
The bounty hunter, the bail bondsman.
Yeah,
type of
yeah,
people.
bail bondsman, bounty hunter.
Paleontologists.
That falls into archaeology.
Yeah, that's
whole-
true. That's true.
Looking through rocks in a pile and digging stuff.
So these are kind of the real life ones, but like mercenary, bounty hunter, and salvagers are the only ones that actually do it for the money.
Right.
For the most part, where like an archaeologist that's a profession where built up around that I guess it's the field work to an academic profession.
Right.
In order to find stuff out, you have to go find stuff out. So
Field research.
Yeah, so the adventurers are the closest thing I would say is they're like the salvagers, which is they go, they try and find something no one else has found, and they take the good stuff and then they leave, and they do it again and again and again.
So dungeon salvage.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
adventuring company of dungeon salvage. Yeah.
So, but it's still kind of weird.
Yeah. I mean, it's only a small percentage of the population that does that. So
Well, yeah.
normally people are like bakers and candlestick makers and stuff.
And it would definitely, like, if we did the fantasy top 10 most deadliest occupations, it would be really high up there.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
You could even do subcategories: eaten by oozes, eaten by dragons, petrified by basilisks. But
Epic monster hunter.
Petrified,
Killed by
shattered,
basilisks.
petrified, and then subsequently shattered by a beholder.
yeah. So I don't know. It just strikes me as odd, and it's a product of the game.
So wait, are you saying that the archetypal adventurer is not a realistic portrayal of people? Would you say it's kind of fantasy based?
Yeah, a little bit.
This thing totally based on fiction is fiction.
What? Fictitious.
Well, then, so it makes sense that there are these crazy adventures.
So
but at
we've
the same
been playing a
time,
game all along. This was not real life.
Who knew?
is this real life?
Yeah, David after the dentist.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, that's a really good point. Is that there's this whole fantasy aspect to it, so you can have those people, and they can be the major points in like a heroic story. But then there's also, it's that whole willing suspension of disbelief. You got to make it real enough that we're not like, this is totally ridiculous. So
That's
whole
ridiculous.
idea
That unicorn would not have rainbow colored hair.
I'm okay with unicorns and dragons, but there's got to be a baker and there's got to be some guy serving me a hot dog or something. Something's got to be normal.
Yeah.
So that idea that you take 6 months off and you have like these crazy wild things happen with dragons and dungeons and all kinds of crazy stuff, but at the same time you have a normal life.
Right, but I guess the other end of that, if you're actually a professional adventurer that belongs to a company of professional adventurers, it's like, I guess you would have the same thing, but you're like downtime between each score. And so maybe part of for them is like planning the next score and or finding the next
Getting
score.
info about it.
Old time sailors would be a good equivalent, because I mean, when you're in port, you're doing all blowing your money and doing whatever you want, and then when you're sailing, you're doing that like 24/7.
Well, the interesting
take
thing,
naps.
there's a thing on NPR about like the sort of like, it's a little tangential, but it's a little bit like how like
Hey, this is a family show. We don't talk like that here.
how like how innovation changed things. So sailors had a lot of time in port because on the docks it would take them so long to organize the crates and get everything on the ship and remove. Like that would take weeks. But then they built like the modern era shipping crate that like they were very modular. They all fit in compact units and like
not where they just tie down sacks.
So it got so much more efficient to load and unload the ship that now sailors would have like a day or two in a given port and then boom, they're out again.
Right.
But like old timey ways of doing things, like less efficient ways, like it gives a lot more downtime. Yeah.
Well, there's other things too, like commercial fishermen and crabbers who have a season, right? They're going to go out for 3 months or whatever. I don't know. I'm not really into that or watch those shows.
It's
We probably
intense.
ask
But
your
I'm
wife
sure
and find
maybe
out.
some people out there actually do these things, and they
Yeah.
can comment and tell us.
Yeah, but,
how that tends to
Are you an
work.
extreme real adventurer?
Yeah. But
Real life
they make
adventurer.
a shit ton of money over a really short period of time, and then they have all that downtime.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but so the thing about innovation that the only thing that's kind of brings it back to fantasy role playing games is the fact that like Magic can occupy that space.
Eberron. It all comes back to Eberron, doesn't it?
Yeah, Magic can be in that space of like technological innovation, or maybe you play in a game that has technologies, like if it's not a D&D type game.
Right.
So, like Shadowrun.
So I guess with that, I mean, how do you guys feel about adventurers compared to the normal person that adventures?
Yeah, let us
So,
know.
In the comments below, let us know your style. Do you prefer the adventure, or do you think it's better to have the downtime? Let us know.
And what's your PC's day job?
Yeah.
So with that, like, comment, subscribe, share,
Check us out on nerdarchy.com.
or even on Facebook.
On Twitter.
Or really all kinds of places.
Or Reddit.
Yeah, just type in Nerdarchy. You'll find us somewhere.
You'll
But
find
with
us there.
that, until next time, my friends,
Stay nerdy.
Who it's like their job is to go out and plumb the depths of the dungeons, right? Which again, a dungeon, the term dungeon, is completely different by definition than what it actually is used for in this game.
Right.
A dungeon is where you hold prisoners.
Right.
It's not a place full of monsters, traps, tricks, and treasure. So like all of that is very weird, and and because I've gamed at the same table as these guys and Ted, like my experience has been the same. But after 20 years or so of running that game, I want to do a paradigm shift personally and go, you know what? That's not what it's about. Like they're not really doing it. Like your character in Ted's campaign is a perfect example. He considers himself a tailor,
Right.
even though he steals and he's shady. But ultimately, at the end of the day,
Well, no, the tailor is his cover, though. I mean, like he
Yeah,
doesn't
so
really.
you
much
do
so.
it well. You still do
yeah.
tailoring.
Yeah, but you're still a tailor. Like it couldn't be, it wouldn't be an effective cover if you didn't know how to actually do the
it
thing.
well, right, yeah.
So you come from tailors. He actually wants to have a tailor shop. Hey guys, Dave from Nerdarchy, for nerds by nerds, here with a bunch of my esteemed colleagues, and today we're going to be talking about players' tips.
But before we do that, maybe we should introduce ourselves.
Nah, they know who I am. That's enough.
I'm Ryan.
I'm Ted.
I'm Nate.
So, okay, we were just having this discussion while Ted was out of the room, and we're kind of arguing back and forth about the whole concept of an adventurer and adventuring. To me, my claim is they're actually it's a very artificial term, and it's not. I don't really feel like it's a real world thing. It's kind of like made up around the mechanics of the game, sort of deal, and. How he started arguing about this was, or discussing, or throwing things at each other.
Yelling. It was just lots of
Passion. There was
But-
passion.
I was talking about how after every one of my sessions, I just want to level up my players, and as long as it's at a stopping spot, I'm going to probably just say time passes, in between each adventures, because I've always had this.
It always has been the story just rolls, and you might take a week here or a day there while you're waiting for something to happen, but it's never as you said, the Dresden Files, where it's like, a year and a half passes or 8 months passes with nothing going on. That's practically unheard of at the gaming table where I've sat.
So going back to just briefly to the freelancer example, the term freelancer actually came from freebooting knights. They were like mercenary knights that would go, and they were lances for hire. So freelancing actually came out of soldiers for hire.
They're mercenaries.
So they're
Exactly.
mercenary knights.
So it's pretty apropos in a way for when you.
So in that
do
case,
adventure.
yeah, that's a job, but I don't like a mercenary is not an adventurer. Adventurer is in this theme
Well, a mercenary could be an adventurer.
It could
it's just
be,
not. It's not always.
but
the case.
the evolution to me is very weird and artificial. Like in Forgotten Realms, I don't know if they did it in Greyhawk or not, but definitely in Forgotten Realms, they started with adventuring companies. This thing where I tended to run one adventure into the other, and it's like, it was kind of cool for what we did, but when you look at the passage of time, it's like you're 7th level and 2 weeks have gone by.
Yeah.
And that may have been a bunch of sessions, but it was like too much stuff that happened in between.
It seems unrealistic.
Yeah.
Like, oh man, I learned so much.
Another
in
good
2 weeks.
example of it is, and I want to borrow for future campaigns, is Dresden Files, where nothing goes on for a while, and then you read a book that happens over the course of 1 or 2 days, and he doesn't sleep at all, almost like a season of 24.
Right.
So, I guess the argument was, you were saying, what about adventurers?
Well, basically, I was looking at them as sort of. It's almost like a freelancer that has a really big project, and then they can take off the next 1 to 3 months or something like that. So they get this really big gig, they work their ass off, and then they go on a quasi vacation.
Okay,
for a month.
let's stop there. What's an adventurer?
Okay, so
what is your opinion here?
I would say an adventurer overall is a guy that either is some kind of epic hero or a person that was in the right place at the wrong time and something occurs and they either have to run or, the way most fantasy novels start at first level adventure. So that's I guess that's kind of gives me that feeling. And then there's, I would say, the NPC version of an adventurer, like a Tomb Raider or some kind of, basically those are the guys who are like, wait, you're not doing this for justice? I don't like you. I always kind of enjoy the good, the good and the upright citizen kind of adventurer rather than the sly or the grave robbing kind of adventurer.
You go adventurer.
Well, my history of stuff at the table has always been the progressive story, and rarely, unless it's physically sought out by the players, because it's this wizard wants to create a magic item, bless you, or this guy wants to forge this weapon,